build an amazing team. You have to invest ahead of the growth. You have to be a tech first and then a restaurant business, which I don't see, and I don't talk to enough people that actually have that mindset.
Finance businesses, they take some kind of an education and like a lot of learning to do. Restaurants, you can learn hands-on.
Company and start a business, but yeah, some are a little bit harder than others.
Restaurants should probably not cost me more than $500,000 to open. So I want at least what you call a 2-to-1.
20%. Well, the franchisee is going to make probably 14, right? Because you get to take royalty.
You're able to look at what competitors are in the market are doing, what kind of revenues, how.
Just open the platforms up, communicate, let everybody integrate to everybody.
You have to have that economic model. It has to be repeatable, not just a one-off when you get lucky, not just some flagship unit. It has to be a repeatable, scalable economic model.
All right, today we have another guest on the podcast, David. We're going to get right into it. So, David, how did you get into the restaurant industry and why?
Well, candidly, it wasn't intentional. I started at a very young age I was born in New York City and kind of grew up in that area and got introduced to restaurants, I think, when I was about 15, and worked for a very successful small group of restaurants. And kind of started literally at the very, very bottom. I literally had to be promoted to become a dishwasher.
Oh,
So,
wow, that's funny.
yeah. But my family had a strong work ethic, and the people at the restaurant I grew up with were extremely hard workers. That they were very successful restaurants, and so I just got introduced from the bottom up. And my brother worked there. Both of my sisters worked for the same group, and today, fast forward almost 50 years, literally about 50 years, my brother's still an executive chef. My sister one of my sisters became a pastry chef. So, I guess it got in our blood early on and it hasn't really left.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Once you get in, it's really hard to get out.
Yeah, it is, I will say, a unique business because you can get into business in the restaurant industry with fairly little capital, right? Like it's not necessarily capital investment if you start out as a true mom and pop. And I've worked with and known people that have done that over the years and become very, very large, successful restaurateurs. They started huge multinational brands over the years, but they all started, at the basics, learning the business from the ground up. And that's kind of rare that you can do that in an industry today. You know, Technology businesses, finance businesses, they take some kind of an education and like a lot of learning to do. Restaurants, you can learn hands-on and have a really successful career.
Yeah, it's very painful to start a company and start a business, but yeah, some are a little bit harder than others. But yeah, tech companies, like I know the pain point there, and I'm sure you know the pain point in the restaurant industry. But you touched on actually the topics for the day. So let's talk about what and how to build a successful brand. So our audience that listen to this, they're usually multi-unit, 5, 6 units, all the way to about 100-unit brands. They're trying to scale, they're trying to grow, they want to make more money, they want to have a better life. How can they do that through the restaurant that they own? So what I wanted to go over is your thesis is you got to build a brand, you got to focus on unit economics, you got to build an amazing team, you have to invest ahead of the growth, you have to be a tech first and then a restaurant business, which I don't see, and I don't talk to enough people that actually have that mindset. So let's break these down one at a time. You say you got to build a brand. What does that mean? When and how do I know I have a brand in this space?
Well, the definition of a brand really comes down to what do consumers think about you when they think about you, right? Like, are they, what comes to mind? What's the promises? What's the value proposition of your brand? What's the voice or the messaging of your brand? How do they think about you and your business? Is it a special occasion place? Is it their place that they think about, hey, I go there just to treat myself when I feel, like something special? Or is it like part of my normal rotation? I go there every week and I just get great value. What are my expectations from a quality and value standpoint? I will tell you, I didn't really understand branding until I had been in the business for probably 20 years. And I really had to read a lot about it. There's a lot of lessons to be learned, particularly from the consumer package goods business, because they are really good at branding. You know, they have very definite things they want you to think about when they think about their soap or their detergent or their cars or whatever it is, right? Like, so building that brand halo first, understanding it, building it, is super important because that is how consumers are going to think about you. And being thoughtful about it and putting that stuff together
So
early
as
on.
a yeah, those are amazing. But what I really want to know is how do I start? What do I do as step one? I want to start building that brand. I love what you're saying. It resonates day one. What do I do today, tomorrow, next week?
Well, number one, I think really understanding what's your point of differentiation, right? Like, how are you different than everybody else in the marketplace? And people, restaurateurs will often say to me, "Oh, I have better pastrami than everybody else, and therefore I'm going to be successful. Or my ice cream is better, or my, whatever it is better." But the reality is that may or may not be true in the eyes of the consumer, number one. So, really understanding how do customers think about you. And you can ask them, like, you can do easy surveys, right? You can do surveys for free, literally nowadays. You can do them in person. And you're like, when you think about me, what makes you come here? Why do you come here? What stops you from coming here more often? Like, you can ask those questions directly of your customers, and then also maybe ask them of non-customers, people that are in your area, people that why don't you come to me? Why haven't you come? Why don't you come more often? And really get that clear in your head from a consumer perspective, not from your perspective.
The surveys you were talking about. The surveys.
Yeah, I think, you can do informal surveys, Survey Monkey. You can literally talk to your customers and ask them what they think about you when they think about you. What is their value perception? How do they feel about you? What kind of a voice or emotion do they have? Are you sort of, a serious food restaurant, or are you kind of more like, oh, it just makes me feel warm and comfortable when I come here? Like, understanding those dynamics are important. If you're going to scale your business, though, I would say getting some professional help is probably like, you don't have to hire a full-time chief marketing officer. You can get, fractional people to help you that have a lot of experience in this. Um, and you should make sure you find people that have experience in your similar business, right? Like, whether it's fast casual or QSR or full service or nightclubs or what, you should get aligned with people that really have done it before in that specific category and done it well in a way that you admire.
100%. Yeah, those are super helpful because even we're doing that, and actually we did a thing and we asked customers, why do you come to us? So one of our biggest things was you make internet headache nightmare outages go away, and that's why we come to you. So we thought they're coming for other reasons, but they weren't. They were coming in because of that, and we pivoted our entire marketing strategy around that to ensure that we go to market with that new messaging that, hey, we just eliminate internet network and Wi-Fi outages. So interesting to learn that from a different perspective, and obviously using that to pivot your marketing messages so you speak to the consumer the same way that they view and see your brand.
Yeah, in the early years, you probably have limited marketing funds available. So you really want to make sure you're leveraging the thing that's going to give you the biggest, results, which is usually getting people to know you, right? Like, you think because you've heard the message 1,000 times doesn't mean the consumers out there have heard it or they know it, right? Like, it's going to take literally years to build a brand. But if you're successful, What I found in my, you know, in my experience, a successful business is one where the brand halo is actually much bigger than the business itself. You might only have 4 or 5 restaurants, or you might have 50 restaurants, but people think you have, hundreds of restaurants because they see you, they hear you, there's word of mouth going on, they see you on social media, they see you all over the place. And a lot of it may be unpaid media if you do the work right.
Yeah, and obviously all of that ties into our next topic. So unit economics. You're very particular on unit economics. Why? Why is it so critical?
Well, I've seen literally hundreds of restaurant companies die either because they didn't get it right in the beginning or they strayed away from it so far that it took them down roads they never thought they would. So it's kind of foundational, right? If either you or a franchisee is going to invest, they've got to get a certain return on that investment in order to want to do it. For any sane person to want to do it over and over again, right? And that means you've got to build it from the start, and that's going to dictate largely that economic model is going to dictate probably how many square feet you should take and what kind of revenue can you sit not when you hit it out of the park, but on an average day, what kind of revenues can you expect? And what is your overhead? What is your cost of goods and labor? And what is your occupancy costs? And there's some sort of industry standards in there that make it a lot easier that I just have had in my head now for decades. And whenever I see brands, and I've seen it many times over the years, stray from that and try to tell you, oh, well, we're different from everybody else. We can afford to do it and not pay attention to that. Those brands are not around anymore. And it happens time and time again. So I just think it's it's literally foundational. And if you don't have it or you lose it over time, it's a house of cards and it's gonna fall at some point.
100%. Everybody thinks they're an exception until they're not. So let's get into a little bit more detail. So let's talk about the investment money because you have a formula around investment that if you invest X, you should expect to get X plus that. So what does that look like?
Look, I think, best of class in the restaurant industry, cash on cash is about 30%. So that means basically, given typical food costs, typical labor, typical rent, and all the other operating expenses, that means let's say my restaurant's going to do $1 million just for easy math, that restaurant should probably not cost me more than 500,000 to open. So I want at least what you'd call a 2-to-1 sales to cost ratio. If my sales are closer to like 1.2 or 1.4, that's then you really have a strong model. Within that sales to cost ratio, you want your prime costs, so labor and food all in, to be around 55%, definitely below 60%. 55% or lower is better. You want your occupancy cost to be below 10%. 8% is better. You want your other operating expenses, including financing, et cetera, to probably be around 15% or less. And if you do the math there, you'll see pretty quickly, especially if you're paying a royalty, you're probably making 15 or 20% on the bottom line. So quick math says if you're doing $1 million and you're making 20% on the bottom line, you're making 200 grand a year, right? So that restaurant is going to get paid off. It cost you 500 grand, or let's say 600 grand for easier math. Cost you 600 grand to open that restaurant. You're going to get your full investment back in 3 years, right? So a 30% return on investment. That's an attractive model. That makes sense to build on. If your economics stray from that, then your returns are not going to be so good, and it's going to be a much harder road.
Agreed. So those are all amazing. And I think what most people, or at least the smaller ones that are trying to get into a franchise model, you and I were having a conversation before, and you said, well, if you're making 20%, well, the franchisee is going to make probably 14, right? Because you get to take royalty. So I think most people also miss that royalty fee that you're going to collect. So you got to think about that as well. So give us a little bit more context around that.
Yeah, I mean the royalty and advertising funds, all those have to be calculated into that into those projections. My team, when we look at a site, and we open 25 or 30 restaurants a year domestically and a bunch more internationally every year, we do a full P&L projection, and like down to the penny. We know exactly what we expect to make year one, what our returns are going to be, what future returns are going to look like. We've done full pro forma models on every site that we look at, in addition to doing all the site, you know, analytics, et cetera, to make sure it meets our criteria. So before we open a restaurant, I know what I expect to make, like to the dollar, including all those expenses that you mentioned. Um, I will say, just as a side note, making it as a mom and pop today, because of the complexity of the business, because of the cost of doing business as a sole proprietor, is very, very difficult. And the odds are even more against you, in my opinion.
I agree. So in that sense, when we're talking about so a lot of people that I've talked to, they're saying, "Hey, the plans are great, but I'm curious to know from your point of view, and because you've done this at least 25 times a year, are those actually accurate? One, it sounds like they are. And then two, how do you, if they're not accurate and they're falling short, nobody cares if you go over the plan. Like if you say, hey,
Sure.
we're doing 1.5 instead of 1 million, no one's going to come to you and be like, hey, why did you go over why did you go over the sales and you made us more money? We're richer today than we were yesterday. Don't do that again. But if you go 900,000 versus a million, then everybody's complaining. So one, are those plans accurate and how do you ensure accuracy? Two, if they're falling short, how do you proactively fix it so that you hit your targets?
Well, I guess two things. You have to have some data. You have to have access to some data. You have to have some experience. Like your first restaurant, you're not going to know. It's a total guess, right? But hopefully you've got some experience and you're able to look at what competitors are in the market are doing, what kind of revenues, how their restaurants are doing as compared to their other restaurants in the region or nationally. So there is some intelligence that you can put together here. And you should get smarter and smarter. It's part of what a franchise system should provide you, is that kind of market intelligence, that data, that ability to forecast and really get better at this. Um, I would just generically say be really conservative. Number one, don't if your projections and your decision is based on your sort of best case scenario, that's probably not a good place. Like I always look at it and say, what if we, what's our low, medium, and high? If I'm willing to live with the low, if that's not the kiss of death, um, then I'm probably okay. If the medium makes me, relatively happy, um, that's a good, that risk is acceptable. And as you said, everybody's happy with the high. So um, that's kind of the way I look at it. When you're doing these projections, what I'm more thinking is risk avoidance. If I have to hit a home run, if my occupancy costs are so high or whatever, or I'm saying to myself, well, the visibility is poor and the access is poor and the parking is poor, but everybody in that town knows where it is. They'll find me. That's probably a bad decision. So, yes, you might be right. You might get lucky, but history says probably not.
Yeah, I
So,
think you touched on something really critical. That's how I look at it. I'm looking at every decision I make is mitigating risk. How do I mitigate my risk and lower my risk so that it's easier to win. The easier it is to win, the more likely you're going to win. And I think that's what you're doing is you're saying, hey, I'm going to go really conservative. And if I can live with the low, then everybody's happy.
yeah, and I will tell you, I've owned a lot of restaurants over the years with partners, and it just takes one bad restaurant to take down two or three really good ones. One bad restaurant can lose more money faster than two good ones can generate. And it will also suck up all your time and energy, and it will require your best people to focus on it just to make it, just to mitigate the losses. So it's not it's the mistakes you make that kill you. It's not if you hit a single or a double every time, you're you're just looking to stack up those wins, right? You don't have to hit home runs. You will eventually, but you don't have to. It's the key to being a multi-unit operator is like having a dependable, repeatable model that you can just go out there and do. And then every once in a while, you hit a home run, you get a great opportunity, and you might want to take some additional risk, but that might be further down the road when you've done the math and say, okay, if this fails, I'm fine with it. Doesn't kill me. I'm fine with it. And you might want to put some things in the contract to make sure you know you're not personally guaranteeing those deals, or you're only you build an entity that has X amount of dollars into it, and that guarantees the deal, and you're willing to walk away. And I have lost a lot of money over the years, a lot,
Yeah, makes
but
sense.
none of it was deadly.
Right. Perfect. So moving on, you touched base on team and the importance of team. I tend to agree with you. I wouldn't be here talking to you while the company is still operating if I didn't have an amazing team behind me. So run me through your philosophy on how to build a great team and how do you recruit the best talent, especially in a difficult industry like restaurants.
Sure. Well, first of all, I think you've probably heard this before. I didn't make it up, but it's the 5 P's to be successful. It starts with people, and then plan, which is strategy, product, which is like what you're selling, right? Performance, which means actually executing at the level you said, and that equals profits, right? If you do those 4 things, you get the profits. And the first thing you have to do is get the right people in the right seats. That is by far first and foremost. And that means number one, your skill set and what you're really good at and what you're passionate about, because you don't need a bunch of people that do the same thing you do and just gonna all do the same thing, right? So for me, I've in business, I tend to look for people that are really smart, particularly in the finance world, that have a strong background in finance and really look at things from a finance standpoint, because that's an alternative perspective that I want to have. Like I want to have that critical eye looking at everything, because I might be passionate about something and they'll bring in some level of reality and go back to the risk and say, hey, that's great, but maybe you ought to look at it this way, or maybe you ought to do this and that in order to mitigate some of that risk. And so finding people that fill in the gaps that you have, whether it's marketing or what have you, is really critical. And that's how I built, you know, some of it by luck, by the way. It wasn't always intentional, especially in the early years, just getting to partner with people that were really smart in areas where I had things that I didn't have. In the early days, it was capital. I had a little bit of capital that I had saved, but I didn't want to be a mom and pop. I wanted to grow fast. I wanted to be a big multi-unit operator fast, and obviously I went out looking for the right capital partners that were looking for just the opposite. They were looking for a really strong operator that was going to run the business and that they had confidence in. And so it's finding people that have what you don't have or are really good at what you're not good at, or both.
Got you. And actually, run me through the 5 Ps because I have a framework that I called PPPT. For me, it was always products first. Like if, like relating to the restaurant, if the product sucks, then if the food is bad, service is bad, or if the POS is crashing all the time, if the internet goes all the time down all the time, then if the product is not good, no one cares. Like no human, no people can fix that. Then it's
Yeah.
people, then processes, then training. But I need to maybe it sounds like it's time to update mine. So you started with people,
Well, I'll recommend a resource. It's called the Entrepreneur Operating System, EOS.
EOS, yep, familiar with that.
And the actual strategic platform that you utilize in EOS is Traction. And if you read the book, What the Heck is EOS, which is just a really good primer on this, it starts with people. And my experience is if you don't get the right people, it doesn't matter how good your product is. And your product's going to change over time, by the way, like it's going to evolve. But if you don't get the right team and build it foundationally, no matter how good your product is, it's going to fail. And it's going to be really hard to figure out what to do and how to adjust it. So for me, it's always starts with the people. That's just kind of how I grew up. It's a cliche, but we are in a people business. And it's also, by the way, for me, the fun part, like building relationships, getting to know people, getting to work with people or for people that I respect and admire and enjoy working with. That's half the reason to work in my now I have worked with a lot of technology people and built technology companies over the years, and you're right, they tend to be more engineering mindset, have a more engineer mindset, and they are much more product first. And I just have always taken I build the teams, I build high performance teams. That's what I do. And that's really carried me through with lots and lots of issues over the years, lots of catastrophes. Just having and being a part of the right team has always made the difference.
100%. I think people will be able to get themselves out and figure out a way out and fix the situation, especially if they're complementary skill sets on that. So people, products, and then what was your third one?
People, products, and process to me, having strong processes that are clear and everybody follows them, that allows average people to perform at a really good level. It allows good people to perform at a great level, and it allows your great people to just hit it out of the park consistently without dropping the ball. And it also allows you, as time goes on, it allows you to go fast. It takes time to build those processes, have scorecards, and really have good data that you're looking at every week and being aligned on goals and resources. That's why I think a strategic management platform like EOS is so important. It's an investment to build all that, but as you're growing, it will allow you to go faster and faster and continue to execute at a very high level.
Got you. And then the next one is performance.
Yeah, you got to you just have to measure performing. You have to know how you're performing literally daily, weekly, monthly, as compared to your budget, as compared to last year, as compared to sort of industry standards. You have to have really good data nowadays. You can't just fly by the seat of your pants and be like, oh yeah, I think my food cost is X, or I think my average customer comes 3 times a year, or I think my error rate on DoorDash is less than 1%. Like you have to know because they're all going to make meaningful differences in your business and how well you perform. So having good data and then using that data to make decisions or information, using that actual information to help you make better decisions is, I think, critical. And it's become much more so over the years.
100%. And I think that's where the big guys win, and that's where the mom and pop and smaller brands don't really have that core advantage. Is assembling all of that data under a single umbrella where you can not just view it, but make decisions based on your even based on what you're saying. It's useless to have the data if you can't make decisions off of it, and if you can't change the direction and you can't decipher the data and make it actionable, it's pointless. And what was the last P after performance?
People, plan, process, performance, that equals profitability.
Oh, profitability. Obviously, the last one is the most critical, because if you're not profitable, then everything's out the door. Nothing else matters.
Yeah, but people get into business starting with how much they want to make, and that's just an outcome, right? Like that's you don't dictate that. That's going to be based on how you do the other four things. If
Agreed.
you want to make if you want to make more money, go back and enhance those other four things, and you'll make more money.
Yeah, I think if you focus on the process, the outcome will focus on. If you focus on the process, the outcome will be there. But focus on the day-to-day activity and not the end goal. There was a famous quote that I read that it said something to the tune of, if you, oh yeah, if you control the inputs, the outputs will follow. So don't worry, don't be so fixated on the output. Just control the inputs because those are controllable. The outcome you can't really control.
Yeah, that's 100% true. And um, I just find it's one of those things that people look at and say, "Hey, I'm not making what I used to make. I'm not making the money I used to make." Well, if you went back and really looked at those other four things, you'd find you were off in one or more areas. Maybe you used to be on, but fast forward a couple of years and no longer are you performing at that same level, or the industry has just moved ahead of you and you're behind. And like that's why you got to focus on those things all the time.
Yeah, especially nowadays, even with technology, and even for me, sometimes I can't even keep up with these AI agents coming out. It's not manageable anymore because they keep changing. So you build something and in 4 weeks it's already outdated and you got to rebuild it. So yeah, sometimes the tech just gets so far ahead of you, and if you don't stay on top of it, you tend to get left behind, and that's not a good strategy.
Yeah, but my my approach or our approach to technology is to be on the forward edge, not the bleeding edge. Like one of the most important decisions we make, back to the people conversation, is partnering with the right vendors and particularly technology vendors. So picking the right people can take some time. It's not necessarily the first people that approach you. Like we need to partner with the people that are going to win in their category, whether that's a delivery service provider or a POS company or a marketing company or a data company, whatever it is. The supply, any of your suppliers, getting the right partners for the long term is for us one of the most important decisions we make in terms of the right people. That's a huge part of it because they will help you be successful or they will drag you down because and and frankly hold you back from doing what you're maybe capable of doing.
Yeah, makes sense. Actually, let's go. So that's a great segue into our next topic. You mentioned on being technology first, and obviously you just mentioned that your technology vendors are your most important ones. Why? Why is it critical nowadays to be tech first? And yeah, maybe not on a bleeding edge, but how do you view that, and why behind your thought process?
Well, I think the definition that I'm most comfortable with is we are a technology enabled company. We're not a technology company. So, and that just matters because that's how the consumer behaves today, right? Like the same customer might walk in our shop, order from the counter, get their food, sit down, have a nice meal, talk to the manager and whatever. That same customer tomorrow might call the shop, and that same customer might be at the office next week and they need catering. That same customer might go on to DoorDash or Uber Eats or wherever it is and order online. Or that same customer might come to our native app and order directly from us. And that same customer might be commenting on their experience on social media or on Yelp or on EasyCater, wherever it is. They might be rating us or on Google, right? So customers are interacting with us, using us however they want, whenever they want, wherever they want. And if we're not there, then we're not in the conversation, right? We're not in their consideration set anymore. So we don't dictate how people want to access us or leverage our services or give us like we don't dictate any of that. And we just have a decision to make. Do we want to be there or not? And if we're not, they're not going to go find us. They're just going to go to whoever is there and who is more convenient, who is easier to do business with. And so that means being integrated, fully integrated seamlessly in a way that's really convenient and works basically every time um, with all of those technology providers. So we have deep relationships with all those platforms, and we're looking at how we perform on those platforms and what we need to do to perform better on those platforms and learning from them. What are their best practices? And, just having a deep relationship with those technology providers is one way you can get really good at this. And You don't necessarily, we have an IT department, but they're not huge. A lot of our, IT is outsourced to what we think are best in class partners.
That makes sense. Yeah. And also, I don't think people like restaurateurs rely or leverage the technology partners that they have to the extent that they should, because they're seeing the whole industry as a whole, right? They're looking at other restaurants in your area. They've done it before for somebody else, or they've made the mistakes. All that is, why not just leverage them and say, hey, this is a challenge that we have. Have you ran across that? Have you solved that for so and so or somebody else? And then what do you recommend? And I don't think that they're relying on the technology companies to help them move things forward, especially in this industry. It's so difficult. And you're right, like an internet outage, like in the middle of a day between your lunch hour, it's gone. Like revenue's gone. You're not going to recoup that revenue. You're not going to go
Uh,
back and 3 hours later and order again, or you're not going to order double tomorrow. So relying on the technology companies to ensure that these preventable revenue loss doesn't happen is critical.
Yeah, and also giving you, as you said, giving you the information to say, this is your downtime. This is how you compare to other people in the industry. You're doing better or worse, and this is how you can improve it, right? Like as you said, not only did you miss that revenue opportunity, that customer might not come back to it at all anymore. It doesn't take too many bad experiences to have people say, I'm just going to go someplace else where it's easier.
Of course, yeah. I can imagine you order online and you show up and you're like, oh, what order? And it's like, oh yeah, the order I put in like 30 minutes ago because I was in a hurry to get in and get out. And now you're asking me to wait 20 minutes for the food to be ready. No, I don't have the time. That's why I ordered ahead.
No, that's very true. And I think um, we are living, and I think this is a topic maybe we'll talk about a little bit later. We are living in what is called the age of convergence, where all of these technologies are beginning to talk to each other. Um, and that has to happen seamlessly behind the scenes. Um, so that if the customer is literally driving in their Tesla down the road and they use voice ordering to access your website and place an order, it just has to work. I don't know how to make it work. I'm never going to know how to make it work, but I have to make sure I partner with the people that can make that work and integrate it into the rest of my technology stack seamlessly. Um, and just make it all happen so that again the consumer has a really good experience.
I agree 100%. And I think another thing, a note to all of the technology companies out there, it's like just open the platforms up, communicate, let everybody integrate to everybody. And at the end of the day, if that happens, everybody wins. You win, the other tech company wins. Now, yes, you do compete with each other on some of these bits and parts, but ultimately, I think the mistake that was made that I think the restaurant industry, if it wasn't because of COVID, the COVID would probably wouldn't even have online orderings in half of the restaurants. And I think it's single-handedly is because of Aloha, because they just would not let anybody integrate into that freaking platform. And look where they are today. They're almost like non-existent in the SMB side because everybody just switched out. But then you've got other players that are now repeating the same mistake, and they're now willing to let the guy in a garage that has a better idea build that solution and push it out. Why? Because they don't want to compete with them.
Yeah, yeah, it seems to happen to every a lot of companies eventually think that they are the Department of Defense and have to protect everything, and it's annoying. But that is kind of how things typically go, but it goes back again to picking the right partner. That's going to be the right long-term partner for you.
100%. Let's go on to like investment. You're a big believer in investing ahead of the growth. Why? How do we do that? Why is it? Uh, it seems to be very counterintuitive in some ways and makes a lot of sense in some sense. But why park all that capital? It may not happen, but it may happen.
Well, if you don't have the capital, first of all, you are going to be capital restricted as to what opportunities you take advantage of, and you don't know what they are going to be. So you don't have to access it early on. You don't have to have it just sitting in your bank account, but you have to have a pretty clear line of where you're going to get it when you need it. And number one, I would say, first of all, it just depends upon what your goals are. We started by saying, are you looking to become a 5 unit operator or 10 or 100 or 1,000? Like, and I'm not talking about some dream that you have in the middle of the night. Like, what is your 10-year plan? And if you don't have a 10-year plan, then you need one because that's going to back up. That 10-year plan should back up and form your 3-year plan. That should back up and form your 1-year plan. And it should back up and form your quarterly plan. So knowing what capital you're going to need and where it's going to come from to hit this 10-year plan, it's kind of like picking a site and opening a business without any financial projections on what that business is realistically going to do. That's setting yourself up for failure. If you're got a 10-year plan, then you don't have a sort of a cash flow plan and a financial plan up ahead, ahead of starting, then there's the possibility you're going to find yourself at a dead end road because you didn't plan for it. And lastly, I guess in my experience, everybody tends to be overly optimistic when they project how much it's going to cost and how long it's going to take. Um, you know, reality is it's probably going to cost several times more than you think, like at least three, maybe 5 to 6 times more than you think. And it's going to take 3 to 5, 6 times longer than you think. And yes, there's exceptions. Companies have popped out of the box, and 3 to 5 years later, they're sold for $1 billion. Great, more power to them. But that's not the norm. It often takes years, right? Like, and so be prepared for that.
That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, obviously Dave Chicken did in 5 years sell for $1 billion, but those guys absolutely crushed it. But I agree with you; those are the exception, and those are the ones that everybody hears about, but nobody really hears about the other 10 that died to pave the path for one per company to make $1 billion.
And those guys, by the way, were very experienced. They had a team in place. They had leaders in place that they could put. They had the investment in place. They had the leadership in place. They had done it before. They knew how to do it. They had done it successfully multiple times. They were set up for success. Like that was not luck, right? They were really smart and really good at what they were doing. They had the capital. They had the experience. They made sure they had the product. They did it right? And the result is evident.
100%, yeah. The team there, we actually had a chance to work with them at a very early when they only had like 4 stores. But then, yeah, the team there just you're absolutely right. It wasn't luck by any means. It was purely execution based on experience, strategy, connections, the capital that they had, and everything else that played into that successful journey until the exit.
Yep. Yep.
Let's touch base on franchising a little bit. Actually, let's back up a little bit. So you mentioned something about Norman Brinker. You can you refresh my memory on that?
Sure. So Norman Brinker, I would say, literally started the national casual restaurant industry. He very early on started Steak and Ale Corporation, which many people probably haven't heard of, but they were one of the first national restaurant brands, true brand, full service brands. Very successful. Then he started Bennigan's, and I came out of college and went to work for Norman in the very early years of Bennigan's and went and got to run a lot of stores around the corporate office in Dallas, and I got to work with some at a very young age. Got to work with some Norman and some of the people that founded the company and built the company. Chris Sullivan was the president at the time. Chris went on to found Outback Steakhouse. Ken Ken Taylor was a he and I were the same age. We went through the training program together. He went off and founded Texas Roadhouse very successfully, and I can name a dozen other people that are at the top of the industry today that started working for Norman Brinker. That I people that I really highly respect, and so he went on to buy Chili's and grew Chili's into the national powerhouse. He bought Macaroni Grill, built that to huge. I mean, the guy did it over and over again, and he was just a tremendous guy, and to get an opportunity to work for at a very young age. And he was one of those guys that didn't care how old you were or young you were. he would give you the opportunity, and if you perform, he'd just give you more and give you more. And it was just a great experience. And like I said, a lot of the leaders in the industry today, I would say almost a third of the leaders in the industry at one point had worked for Norman Brinker at one point in time or another.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, and trust is earned. You have to prove your way, and otherwise, it just nothing's nothing's just handed out. But yeah, all those brands, Texas Roadhouse, Outback, and these are successful brands that have been built by probably advice of a great founder.
Yeah, he's an incredible person as well. Just a really neat guy that, you know, unfortunately he's passed. But just that opportunity was one that I'll never forget.
Yeah, the mark on the industry will remain true. Let's talk a little bit about franchising. So, you guys have franchise. You have franchised yourself. You've been on both sides of the equation. Um, I've got a 10-unit restaurant brand. I want to start franchising. If you could just highlight some of the steps. Should I franchise? Should I not franchise? Is it a good idea, bad idea? Obviously, everybody thinks of it as like, oh, I'm going to franchise and go from 10 to 100 or go from 10 to 300 and sell for $1 billion. What are people missing? So, how to mitigate the risk?
Sure. Well, let's start with the the data, the information. Every year in the franchise industry, not just restaurants, but within the franchise industry, there are about three or four hundred franchise companies started every year. And if you fast forward 5 years from that, pretty consistently, less than 10% of those companies are still in business. Okay, so statistically, you know, three, 400 restaurant, franchises start. Fast forward 5 years, only 30 or 40 of them will still be in business. Of that 30 or 40, very few of them, very few, will ever get um, north of 100 units. Um, so that's just the statistics in the industry. Most franchisors don't make money as a franchisor. They don't get into the black, going to back to those capital needs. They don't start making money until they're north, usually of 100, sometimes 150 units. If they're actually growing and investing ahead of growth and doing all the things that they need to do, should be doing to support their franchisees properly and to build the brand properly and get the right people on board. And the right people are expensive, by the way. They take a lot of capital. So those are just the statistics, right? Like, so the odds are against you. You should know that going in and be prepared for that. Um, and then you got to do all those right things to make sure you're one of the people that get to 100 and 150, and then grow from there. Whether you become 200 restaurants or 500 or 1,000 or 5,000, I've done all of those, and you kind of have to have that clear plan up front and be prepared for it. The basics for franchising is really simple. You have to have a brand, a business that is really, well branded, number one. Number two, you have to have that economic model, and it has to be repeatable, not just a one-off when you get lucky, not just some flagship unit. It has to be a repeatable, scalable economic model. And you have to be able to simply teach other people how to do it, right? Like, it can't be some unique skill set that only a few people can do. It has to be something you can take the average person, and if you take the average person and train them, they can perform at least the average level and get at least an average return on that investment and want to do it again. So that's really kind of the basics of franchising, I guess, at the core. And you've got to really consider, is the business ready to do that? I see a lot. There's a bagel store down the street from I live in Vegas. There's a bagel, and we're based in Vegas, and Vegas is one of the most restaurant heavy towns in the world today. I mean, it's incredibly the restaurant scene here is incredible, but there's a bagel place down the street from me that I love. They have great bagels, New York style bagels. Their products is outstanding. They have one location. It's cool. They started franchising with one location. I'm like, and when I go in there, by the way, it's always a Chinese fire drill. I'm like, they are so disorganized and have no idea what they're doing. And but their food's great. They're very hospitable. All those things that an entrepreneur, should do. They do all that stuff really well. Great food, great product, great service. But it's a fire drill. They have no process. I don't see how you can teach anybody. Their setup, their design is makes no sense at all. Their menu has clearly not been well engineered because they have their huge menu all over the board. So they're not, they haven't defined their brand and what they really are. They're just trying to be like five different things. And they're franchising and I constantly get messages for them. And people will buy franchises from them. We'll try and open them. I'm like, man, you guys are so far from being ready to do this, but they they are choosing to do it. So what you're saying is very common, and I just think it's the reason it's going to be much more expensive. And that guy probably could have opened, a dozen of those places here in town and owned and operated all of them and done very well for himself. Instead, he's trying to franchise, and you got to ask yourself why. Like he didn't really build the foundation. He didn't really prove it out. He didn't figure it out. He didn't put the right people in place. He didn't put the processes in place. He just decided to go fast and in what's a very competitive environment. There's lots of good bagel brands out there. So, um, it's interesting. I just people make these decisions that I don't always understand.
I agree 100%. We actually had a customer that did the same thing. Like, got in and started franchising, and it was it was a funny scene with one of the locations at nighttime would turn into like a DJ place, and it's like, is this a restaurant? Like that was the only one, right? And that like it would turn into a nightclub at nighttime. So
That
it's
might
like
be
completely off brand, right? Like
that
completely
might
off brand.
that might be a great business for one person. Like, hey, this is a great business. It makes tons of money. I'm making great money during the day. I'm making great money at night. I should just go open up a few more of these things and I'll be good. Like that, that's certainly a viable option. And by the way, I, I've had many partners over the years, and I've bought companies successful restaurant companies that we tried to franchise and failed and lost a lot of money. So it's not like I haven't made this mistake myself, by the way.
That makes sense. I want to touch base on one other topic. You had mentioned earlier that you got to have a plan, you build the plan out, and then if the plan, what I was asking, actually, Jimbo, if you could go back and edit this and add it to that other clip. So, what I ask is you create a plan and you create your low, mid, high plan, but if things don't go to plan and if you're falling short, how do you overcome that? And how do you proactively fix it to ensure that you hit the revenues? Like case in point, I had a very high executive that I know in the industry, and he was complaining of this exact same problem. He's like, listen, I get my sales reports like middle of the month, and by middle of the month, half of the month is already gone. Now I gotta go back to my marketing. I gotta create a campaign. I gotta figure out what to do to turn this around so I'm not comping negative 10% at the end of the month, and it's just not possible. It's impossible to be able to do that in such a short span of time because I don't have access to that data. So I'm curious to know how you overcome that. And when things are not going to plan, how do you proactively get in front of it so that you don't comp negative 10% for the month because whatever, XYZ?
Yeah, I think what you're pointing out is very common. And first of all, he doesn't have the data, right? He's not getting data on a timely basis. And I can't tell you how many franchisees I talk to that don't even generate accurate P&Ls. So they don't actually know where they're at. And by the time they find out where they're at, it's too late. They're out of cash. It's too far down the road and it's very hard to fix. And sometimes it can be fixed, but sometimes it can't. So we get data every day, and we look at the data every day, and every week we evaluate how are we performing versus what we expected to do versus last year. and how are we trending? Are we trending better or are we trending worse? And if we keep trending that way, where are we going to end up? So we know that we know that information real time, and so we can make small adjustments or make take advantage of small opportunities to fix it. Like if you're getting in, if you're looking at sales every every 30 days or looking at P&L or and every 2 weeks, especially as you get bigger, it's too late, right? You're not getting timely data. You're not getting actionable data. So that's why I said having that performance measurement, having those metrics real time, so you can look at them and see where you're off. You know, if you're waiting a month to find out if your bank deposits are being made, you might find out somebody didn't make the bank deposits and you're out however many thousands of dollars and too late. You should have known that, right? So it goes back to having data and watching it and being data. It's a balance, right? It's 50% information or data and 50% experience, knowing what to do with the data. You got to have both. It's not either or. Nowadays, you have to have both. And unfortunately, there are still people out there that think they know it, um, think they have a handle on it because it's all going good, but the reality is they don't know what's happening inside, and eventually that catches up with you. So, especially when times get like times are not always good, right? There's always a new headwind out there that you're not expecting, whether it's COVID or supply chain issues or restrictions and restriction in capital markets or increased cost of capital or whatever.
Tariffs, yeah, cost of avocados going through the roof, or
Right.
chickens, eggs, and beef
But
prices, yeah.
but the things you're talking about are knowable. They don't happen usually overnight. They happen a little bit at a time. And you could, when that starts happening, you can say, hey, we want to, it looks like the cost of avocados are going up. Let's do a little menu engineering here and start featuring products and promoting products that don't have avocados on it, right? Or let's start making some micro adjustments so we don't go, to the end of the year and find out that our cost of goods increased by 5 points because we never made the shifts. So it's access to data and then obviously having a plan to use that information in a way that gets you where back to plan where you want to be.
100%. Yeah, I always say if the data does not allow you to make a decision, why look at it? It's just completely pointless. It makes no sense. It has to be actionable data, and especially in a restaurant, in any business, but especially in the restaurants, that data has to be transactional data. So it has to be something that you tie back into some sort of a profit and loss to the customer, and again, use that data to drive revenues.
Yeah. And it's usually there's people that understand how to make small micro 1% adjustments in their business every day that and just stack those up over time. Those are the people that do the best in my mind. It's not people that have some genius brainstorm idea that wake up one day and they completely radically shift their business overnight and take it to the stratosphere. That's not usually how it's done. So looking at the data, making sure you have actionable data and using it, making micro adjustments because your adjustment might be wrong, right? Like you might say, hey, this is what's happening. I think I can do this to fix it. And then tomorrow you wake up and go, that didn't fix it. Let's shift. Let's make another adjustment, right? Like it's usually a process of elimination more than it is anything else.
Yeah, experience is irreplaceable. So there's no way you could substitute anything else for that experience. So partnering with somebody who's done it before will save a ton of time, capital, and headache. Any other points that you like to leave the audience with? Anything that you like to share?
Yeah, I think in our industry and in many industries, we are, as I mentioned, living in this age of convergence where all these technologies, 5 or 6G and autonomous vehicles and robotics and sensors and AI and all this stuff is coming together. And for the first time in literally world history, they're talking to each other and they're starting to work together. So it's literally a unique time in history, and that means we are going to see a lot of disruption. And if I have another recommended reading, it would be called The Future is Faster Than You Think by Stephen Kotler and Peter Diamandis. I think two really bright guys. And there's sections in there on every industry: real estate, finance, supply chain, food and beverage. And it really kind of gives a reality check into what's coming up. And so I think educating yourself on what's coming up and where it's heading so you're not surprised is really important. And that's probably my number one recommendation is educate yourself. You don't have to go sit in a classroom, just read a book or listen to a book and on where we're heading, because it is knowable and it's going to create huge opportunities for people that navigate it well, and it's going to disrupt people and maybe leave some people behind a lot faster than they think. So that's my recommendation.
100% agree. Yeah, this is a very unique time. It's kind of going back to the 2000s when the internet got started and the big box retailers. This is David versus Goliath in a way where the smaller ones are not gonna win, the big ones are gonna win. The complete opposite of that shift where big box retailers like Blockbuster versus Netflix, Uber versus taxis, Airbnb versus the hotel industry. I think we're seeing another shift of that, but I think this time it's not going to be the small players that get the opportunity to go big. I think it's going to be the big players that are actually going to have that unique advantage because they have more money, they have more resources. They're going to leverage these new tools and they're just gonna scale so much faster. I mean, we've seen so many companies pass a freaking $1 trillion market cap, and not just one. They've gone. It's taken them 30 years to get to $1 trillion market cap, and it took them 2 years to go to $3 trillion in market cap, or four, or now $5 trillion in market cap. Like 5 trillion, like that's 12 zeros, like 12 zeros. Like that's unimaginable. But that's what these big companies can do because they have the capital, the human power to do that.
You can you can partner with those companies, right? You can be a part of their platforms. You can be on DoorDash. You can be with Uber Eats or Grubhub. You can be with Easy Cater. You can be with these technology companies. You can be on these social media platforms. You have a choice, right? Like you can engage with them and learn how to optimize your performance on them over time, or you can elect to just stay out of it. And I think, unfortunately, those that just stay out of it are the ones that will actually be left behind, the ones that engage and learn how to make money on those platforms. And we make money on all those platforms. Um, Maybe not as much as we would have made if a customer just walked in the door and ordered, but we still make money. And we just learn how to price accordingly and how to perform our best on those platforms and how to transition that customer to our own native app. Like we learn how to do that over time and get smarter and smarter at that, making micro adjustments. And I think that's a pretty good indicator of what the future looks like. And those that aren't doing those things may have more, a lot more difficulty going forward.
100%. David, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I appreciate the knowledge and the wisdom that you shared with the fellow restaurant owners. And as always, again, thank you for being on the podcast.
That was a pleasure. I enjoyed it very much. Have a good one.
Thanks.